admissions going to larger facilities do not necessarily need to do that. You will keep more patients local, you will keep more dollars local, and it's a way to fund those hospitals more directly for the care they provide, as opposed to incentive-based care or Walmart care, which is what we're running towards.
I've never heard the term Walmart care, but that's a very good illustration.
You can use that, by the way. It's not happening.
Steve, I appreciate what you're saying, because, see, to me, I like economic solutions, and I think that's what you have to sell. And you just provided one, because if you don't acknowledge those extra costs, and by the way, well, I'll get to that. If you don't acknowledge those extra costs of travel, of overnights, of family, I mean, there are all kinds of things that actually add, but there's something even more profound, though, I think, than that, although that's enough. I like it. I like the bullet. One of the things, when I was Economic Development and Finance Director for Governor Schaefer, for you all, but under Governor Schaefer, I remember one time calling him and saying, Ed, I've got this moral dilemma in my mind. I said, you know that there is a town every 9 miles along the railroad. Did you know that? And the reason for that is that's when the railroad came through the west, they threw lumber off every 9 miles or so, basically said this is the optimum distance between communities for moving grain to the elevator with a horse and wagon. We don't take grain to the elevator with the horse and wagon anymore. So tell me, what is our job from a public investment standpoint to ensuring this rural infrastructure, if you will, this rural infrastructure means communities? Because from an investment standpoint and a return on investment standpoint, it doesn't make sense to me. And Walmart's not going away. I've often said that about a lot of industries, although never in healthcare. And he said, Kevin, he said, here's what I think. He said, you've got to realize that the government, the state in this case, is not there to decide for a local community what is and what is not economic development. In other words, what critical infrastructure in one city may be different than another. A hardware store might be considered critical infrastructure in a small community, whereas it certainly wouldn't be in Bismarck, right? So you're trying to create new wealth. And of course that goes against everything that I would believe in pure economics, supply side economics. But he said, here's why it's important to do it. Because economics aside, we are all that is left in the center of the country, is all that is left of the moral backbone of this country of ours. That our culture alone is worth investing government dollars into to maintaining. Now that challenges the sensibilities of a free market thinker like me, but I've never forgotten it, obviously. Now you're not making that case. You've made a very good economic case, but there's a greater case as well, in that access is important. We drive further, faster, don't we? I mean, we do. We're all more mobile than we've ever been. So we're not going to have as much as we used to have. But places like Valley City and Allendale and Headingley and other can do, of course, are their regional centers themselves and need to be maintained. So, great point. I'll take this one step further. When I think about it, I'm on the board of trustees at the University of Mary. I'm an executive trustee, and I know what it costs to educate a young person or an older person. I know what it costs to pay for a degree, to cover the cost of getting a degree. And one of the things I've always said at the University of Mary is the state ought to pay us to run the university system. It would be so much leaner because we actually save the state money by educating 3,000 students at the University of Mary that the state doesn't have to pay to educate. And yet the state is constantly trying to market to get those students into their university system. Now that seems crazy to me. And yet we create this infrastructure in government sometimes that competes with private sector and ought not. We ought never do that as just fundamental to our free market society and entrepreneurial spirit onto this great country. Thank you. That's a great illustration. Yes?
Just kind of going back to the Affordable Care Act. There are candidates that are opposed to the Affordable Care Act and candidates that are in favor of the Affordable Care Act. And I just offer, for your consideration that there are some elements within the Affordable Care Act that are, they're here and they're here to stay. One of them is a heavy emphasis on prevention, as we talked about prevention earlier. And that's gonna be part of either the current law or any law that comes along that replaces it.
Yes.
The other part of it is the emphasis on outcome being providers based on the quality of care and the outcomes they're having. And I think that's an element that probably you can appreciate and
Yes.
feel to you, because in a way it's a little bit like merit pay to providers. We typically, if you and I get sick, the provider gets paid X amount of dollars. If they do a really good job with us, it's the same amount. If they do a poor job with us, it's the same amount. So providing payment to providers based on looking at the outcomes that happen. Our tertiary providers are already getting paid on a certain level of outcome based on a certain number of conditions. So this is something that's already here, and is going to be going forward, and it's part of the Affordable Care Act, and whether it stays or it's likely to stay there.
It's going to be, there's going to be some form of it in a new one, is what you're saying. I think there are lots of things that are going to be in any new law. I mean, but some of them are things that we've done here in North Dakota long before they became federal issues. I mean, we hear so much about pre-existing conditions as an example. We figured that out a long time here, a long time ago here with the CHEN program and pooling and then spreading the extra costs out among the payers, sort of socializing it, if you will, because we do have an acknowledgement that there are situations that in our very wealthy country that demand a response. But no, thanks. That's good too. That's very helpful. Very helpful. What else?
Take you off healthcare for a second. I think just from a populist perspective, a number of us are fairly frustrated with the organization you wish to join. And view it as fairly ineffective and probably not serving the interests in a lot of ways, regardless what your affiliation or party is.
Sure.
What are you going to do to make it more effective?
Do you want to know that this question, although he's framed it much kinder than something this is the most common question I get.
Well, then you're going to have an answer. So.
Yeah. The thing I always like to do is remind everybody that in 2008, Barack Obama was elected by larger margins than any president really recently. Probably no president in my time as a voter has enjoyed more goodwill behind him than Barack Obama did. And with that, he got a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate. He had the ability to do everything and anything he wanted for us and to us, and did. The result was in 2010, people said, we prefer divided government. This gridlock that we now complain about was probably the very thing that many voters sought when you see too much power on one side. So now what happens? So on one hand, you have sort of runaway, whether it's Republican, Democrat, in this case Democrat, philosophy and policy, and probably a little more extreme than most of the country is comfortable with. On the other hand, you have this gridlock, which is, depending on what's happening, may be good or bad, depending on your perspective. But it is at the very least unappealing, right? I mean, it's at the very least unattractive to watch happen and frustrating, especially when there are issues to be dealt with. So what am I going to do? Well, this is a tough one, because I think this really is a leadership question. This really is a leadership issue. I always say, where are Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill? Where's Bob Dole and George Mitchell? People who, if they didn't agree with each other, at least respected each other, and I would submit to you, maybe even liked each other. Wouldn't that be unique? I've been to Washington a lot, and I bump into John Boehner fairly regularly. But I never see him dining with Nancy Pelosi. Or, Henry Waxman, or Eric Cantor with some other leader on the other side. That's a bit oversimplistic, and yet at the same time, I think it's rather significant. that there right now seems to be a culture in that town that is bent on not only you looking good, that's almost like that's not enough. It's not good enough unless the other guy looks bad in the process. And I think we have to get over that. I actually think this election will provide some relief, regardless of how it turns out. Because, and it really does come down to, I think in many cases, the healthcare issue. That became so polarizing that it provided an opportunity for Republicans to dig in their heels and buy some time until they could maybe do something different. And it provided some polarization for Democrats because they're just going to, dig their heels in and not become part of the solution. So you have Harry Reid not even allowing a vote on anything that's passed by the House. You have House that is clearly sort of dug their heels in and said, we've got to see if we can't make this president look bad and win this next election. We're going to have one of two things. We're either going to have a brand new president and a fresh start, or we're going to have a president not tethered to re-election who will have earned a second term, and I think we all have to acknowledge we have to work with this. I believe that this election itself will provide some relief, but it's got to be deeper than that. One of the things I bring, I don't know if you all can tell this, but I'm a pretty optimistic guy, and I live with a lot of joy in my life, quite frankly, and I think there aren't enough people that enjoy their work out there. They're nice people. Chris and I have we've enjoyed the fellowship with a lot of the leadership. They've been very nice to us and reasonable people. I keep thinking, well, okay. It's like I have this friend. Can I tell this? I've never told this story in politics. But anyway, I have this friend. His name's Herrick Wolfart. And Herrick was, he is the subject of a movie called The Final Solution. Herrick was a white supremacist in South Africa. He's now an Episcopal priest in Colorado. But he was a white supremacist in South Africa. And he was part of a youth movement to eliminate blacks. He had a change of heart through faith that literally overcame him when he had a black pastor in the sights of his rifle. If you can imagine. And now this guy's really a remarkable guy. And so he has devoted the rest of his life to reconciliation of races. Now we're not quite, hopefully the situation between Republicans and Democrats isn't quite that dire, but it's pretty dire. But Herrick tells this great story of the time that he was invited by a black Pentecostal church in Washington, D.C. to come and speak. And here's this white preacher in this all-black church, and he gets up there and he starts talking about how apartheid is an abomination to the Lord. And, yes, preach it, brother. They start screaming. And he just goes on this litany of how awful, apartheid is and white supremacy, and they're just getting all ramped up, and he had them at a fevered pitch, ready to go. And he said, so my question for you is, why am I the only white guy in this church? And he challenged them, that reconciliation requires both, right? So let's hope maybe that whether it's a leadership issue or maybe it's some freshman, that's willing to put his arm around a freshman from the other party and lead by example, or whatever the case might be, that there can be something better. Because the art of compromise has been lost, hasn't it? It really has. And who gets credit seems to be so doggone important. And if we can kind of shake some of that, we could move the ball forward. And once again, I'm not elected, so I get to be idealistic. But I also am hopeful. With my idealism comes hope. So besides that, you guys, again, we're North Dakotans. We do these things. We actually do work it out pretty well, don't we? I mean, I always tell my friend Joel Heitkamp, after he beats the absolute tar out of me on the radio, but he always lets me on to beat the tar to him a little bit back. I always tell him, but Joel, if you and I were put into a room by ourselves for half a day, we probably could solve most of these issues that we're talking about, that we're fighting about. That's the difference. Our culture needs to be shared. It's not just our wealth or our great ideas for energy development or agriculture or healthcare, but I think our culture needs to be shared too in that town. So, what's next? What haven't I covered?
Any other questions? Comments?
Thank
Thank you very
We
much.
won't take a straw poll, will we? No. These are all my notes, I forgot to go through those. Okay, thank you, you bet.
Next, we have some lunch. I'm thinking.
Lunch.